In the grand scheme of things, nobody expected the bugs to be the easy part. Kara Voss muttered this under her breath as she crouched in the shadow of a crumbling concrete building, watching the lights of a Zekthor fortress blink distantly through the night. It was supposed to be a routine raid: get in, get out, grab supplies, kill a few bugs on the way. Simple. But that was the problem with expectations. They always set you up for failure. She adjusted her helmet, the dark visor gleaming under the dim, flickering light of a nearby wreckage. Her breath came out in a soft exhale, visible in the cold air. In the distance, the Zekthor, an insectoid race from beyond the stars, moved like shadows, scanning the ruins of what was once a thriving city. "You think we can make it through the fence, Kara?" whispered Jax, her second in command, a young man who hadn't seen much real combat but had a sharp eye for strategy. Kara turned to face him. His sandy hair stuck out from under his helmet, and his green eyes were wide with anticipation. He was trying to hide the nerves, but it wasn't working. His fingers twitched near the handle of his plasma rifle. "The fence?" Kara grinned, letting the sarcasm linger. "We're gonna walk right through the front door, Jax. It'll be fine." Jax gave her a skeptical look. "I thought we were supposed to be stealthy." Kara just smiled, then pressed her finger to her comm device. "All right, team. Time to make some noise." The signal crackled, and the rest of her team, 3 other soldiers and a rather reluctant Zrith named Iris, rallied around her. Kara was well aware of the Zritha's discomfort in this situation. Iris, who had been a slave to the Zekthor for far too long, was still adjusting to the idea of fighting back. But she was with them, nonetheless. The Zrith had strange, glowing tattoos on their skin, an unspoken sign of resistance in their culture. Iris were still hidden under her tattered coat, but Kara could see the tension in the way she held herself. Kara was proud of the way her squad had come together, but they were all out of their depth tonight. The mission was supposed to be simple: steal supplies from a Zekthor weapons depot, but there was something about the Zekthor fortresses that never seemed to be as simple as they looked. And she had a sinking feeling this one would be no different. "Let's move," Kara barked. They ran through the streets, sticking to the shadows, the sound of their boots muffled by the ruins. The Zekthor fortress loomed ahead like a dark, organic spire. Everything about it screamed alien. The structure was part biological, part mechanical, as though the fortress itself had been grown rather than built. It pulsated with a sickly green light, the exterior veins lighting up as though it were alive, and that's when it happened. In the middle of the street, their lead scout, a quiet, unassuming soldier named Vash, suddenly froze. His rifle raised, his body tense. "Get down," he hissed. Too late, the wall in front of them cracked open like a giant, jagged mouth. Zekthor soldiers poured out, their massive, chitinous bodies shimmering in the dim light. They had no faces, just multiple eyes that glowed with an eerie yellow intensity. And then came the high-pitched screeching of their weapons, weapons that shot red-hot plasma, fast and accurate. Kara had 2 choices: run or fight, and, of course, she picked neither. "Over here!" Kara yelled, darting behind an overturned vehicle. It was an old, rusty cargo truck, but it was big enough to shield them for a moment. She slammed her fist against the side, and instantly, Jax and the others scrambled into position. "Focus fire!" Kara shouted, her voice hoarse with command. "Take out the scouts first, those big ones with the big guns. Stay tight, move fast." The team fired at the Zekthor in rapid succession. Plasma shots sizzled through the air, splattering against the hard exoskeletons of the aliens. The Zekthor responded in kind, their weapons crackling as they returned fire. It should have been chaos. It was chaos. But Kara's mind worked on overdrive, every movement calculated, every shot a perfect hit. It was like dancing through a nightmare, and she loved it, but that wasn't the funny part. No, the funny part came next. Out of nowhere, Iris, who had been crouching behind the cargo truck in an almost comically timid position, suddenly rose with a gasp. She raised her hands high into the air, glowing blue light radiating from her fingertips. Kara didn't know what was happening, but there was no time to question it. The ground beneath their feet trembled. A massive explosion rang out from the Zekthor base, and in a wild burst of light, the truck they were hiding behind launched into the air, careening toward a Zekthor warship parked on the other side of the street. Iris had somehow managed to channel an ancient, dangerous power, the flame of hope. Did she just? Jax began, his voice breaking into disbelief. Yep, Kara grinned, watching the warship explode into a fireball. I think she did. Iris blinked, her face flushed with confusion. I didn't mean to do that. Well, Kara chuckled, if that's what happens when you don't mean it, I can't wait to see what happens when you do mean it. The explosion wasn't the end of their trouble. It was only the beginning. Because now, the Zekthor knew exactly where they were. The buzzing hum of their approach grew louder, and Kara could hear the mechanical whine of their reinforcements. The mission had just gone from easy to mission impossible in the blink of an eye. By the time they reached the Zekthor fortress outer wall, it was clear they weren't just stealing supplies anymore. They were fighting for their lives, but Kara wasn't worried. She was too busy thinking of ways to outwit the bugs. They may have had numbers and firepower, but she had something better, an artifact. Or at least, that's what the legends said. The Flame of Hope, an ancient relic of the Zrith, was said to possess enough power to shift the tide of any war. Kara didn't believe in fairy tales, but she had to admit, the Zrith had something the Zekthor feared. And maybe Iris had just unlocked it. With the team in tow, they began their final push. There was no turning back now. There were too many lives at stake, and far too many bugs on the horizon. Kara stepped forward, turning back to her squad with a smirk. All right, she said, let's kick some bug ass. And then, they ran toward the Zekthor fortress, the glow of Iris' strange energy lighting their way. They didn't know what they were walking into, but Kara didn't need to know everything. She only needed to know one thing: they were going to win. They ran toward the fortress, the eerie hum of the Zekthor war machines echoing behind them. Kara could feel her pulse racing, not from fear but from the electric charge of the hunt. They were in enemy territory now. There was no retreat, no fallback position. Every step forward brought them closer to something more dangerous, but also more crucial. If the legends were true, the Flame of Hope could alter the course of the entire war. Kara didn't need to believe in legends to know they needed it. She only needed to believe in the grit and determination of the people she was fighting with. She'd seen enough to know that if they didn't act now, they would lose everything. Iris, stay close, Kara called over her shoulder, her voice sharp. They had reached the outer walls of the fortress now. The giant, pulsating structure loomed in front of them, its organic surface writhing in a rhythm that almost made it look like it was breathing. Iris nodded, her blue tattoos faintly glowing under her torn cloak, her face an unreadable mask of focus. The transformation that had begun when she first touched the flame's energy seemed to intensify with every moment. It was like watching someone tap into a power they didn't quite understand, something wild, dangerous, but alive. Kara wasn't sure if Iris was scared of it or embracing it, probably a bit of both. They reached the base of the fortress's wall, where the dark, slick surface seemed to shift and ripple as if aware of their presence. Kara tapped her comm again, sending a quick signal to the others. She motioned for Vash to take the left flank, Jax to cover their rear. The Zekthor weren't the kind of enemy you could just waltz up to and knock on the door. If they were going to break in, they had to do it with precision. "Okay, listen up," Kara whispered. "This is the real deal. I'm guessing they're keeping the flame in the heart of the fortress. We'll hit the guards first, then move fast. Iris, you're our wild card. When we breach the inner core, you need to be ready to do whatever it is you did with that truck." Iris's lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at Kara, her brows furrowed. I don't know what happened back there. We don't have time for, I don't know, Iris," Kara cut in, her voice low but insistent. "I need you to do whatever it takes. We're in this together now." Iris bit her lip, eyes flicking from Kara to the others, then back to the fortress. She nodded slowly, though Kara could see the doubt still hanging around her like a cloud. She didn't blame her. The power Iris wielded was terrifying, and nobody knew the full scope of it. But they couldn't back down now. The future of humanity, of the Zrith, was resting on this raid. "Let's move," Kara ordered. The team fanned out, each one taking their position. The fortress was alive with movement, the soft clicking sounds of the Zekthor patrols reverberating through the air. Kara felt a prickling sense of tension, but she didn't stop to second-guess herself. She focused on the job at hand: breach, retrieve the artifact, and get out. They advanced, sticking to the shadows, the walls of the fortress looming higher with each step. Kara could see the way the surface shimmered under her boots, like it was reacting to their presence. The Zekthor had a way of integrating everything into their hive mind: machines, walls, even the ground beneath their feet was a part of them. Jax's voice crackled in her ear, "We're in position, Kara. Ready to breach." She glanced at him, young, eager, but somehow still unsure. Kara had watched him grow into a soldier, but the fact that he was still jittery in moments like these reminded her how much they were all in over their heads. She could see the slight tremble in his hands as he steadied his weapon. But he was good. He always came through. Kara's eyes flicked back to the fortress ahead. The moment was upon them. With a signal from her, the team surged forward, their steps quick, synchronized. They'd trained for this moment, and though nothing could ever prepare you for the real thing, they were as ready as they would ever be. They reached the base of the wall in a blur of motion, and with a grunt of exertion, Kara pulled a plasma cutter from her pack. With practiced ease, she aimed it at the section of the wall that had the faintest signs of wear, likely a spot where Zekthor guards had passed too many times. The cutter hummed to life, the beam cutting through the organic material like a hot knife through butter. Sparks flew, and the wall gave way with a low, resonating thrum. They were in. Kara's heart skipped a beat as the air inside the fortress was thick with the hum of technology, but also something else. An energy. A pulse. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach. "Iris, stay close," she said, her voice steady. The others followed suit, stepping into the chamber beyond, where alien machinery twisted and pulsed with strange, otherworldly light. The atmosphere was suffocating, oppressive. There was something wrong with the air here, as if the walls themselves were alive. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, bathed in a soft blue light. Kara's eyes locked onto it immediately. This was it. The flame of hope. The team moved in synchrony, weapons raised, but something didn't feel right. The buzzing of Zekthor soldiers echoed through the air, growing louder. Kara's gut twisted. They weren't alone. Before she could react, the first Zekthor soldier burst into view, its mandibles snapping in their direction, its massive claws outstretched. Kara shot, hitting it square in the chest. It staggered back, but more were coming. Hundreds of them, all swarming into the chamber, their eyes gleaming with ferocity. The battle was on. Kara fired again, her rifle singing as it spit out high-velocity rounds. The Zekthor returned fire, their weapons cutting through the air in a crackling arc. Behind her, Jax shouted as his shot missed wide, but Vasha's rifle cracked true. The first wave of Zekthor soldiers dropped, but more poured in. "Cover me!" Kara shouted, taking cover behind a pillar. Her heart pounded, but her mind was laser-focused. Iris, now. Iris's glowing blue eyes widened. She raised her hands, and the air around them hummed with energy. She stepped forward, almost as if drawn to the pedestal, her movements hesitant at first, just like before. "Iris," Kara shouted. "Do it, now!" Iris's hands flared, blue light streaming from her fingers. The energy expanded outward in a shockwave, and the Zekthor soldiers faltered, staggering back, their weapons malfunctioning, their bodies convulsing. The ground rumbled beneath them as if the whole fortress was reacting to Iris's power. Kara's heart skipped again as she realized, this was no ordinary artifact. The flame of hope wasn't just some weapon, it was a source of unimaginable power, capable of reshaping the battlefield. And Iris, despite her fears, was the conduit for it. "Get to the pedestal," Kara ordered, but she knew it wasn't just her leadership that would win this battle. It was everything they had. Together, the Zekthor weren't finished. They swarmed the team, clawing and biting, but now, with Iris's power, they were fighting on their terms. As Kara made her way toward the pedestal, she knew there was no going back. Whatever this artifact was, whatever Iris could do with it, it would either destroy them all or save them. She could feel the heat rising around her, feel the energy thrumming through the air. This was no longer just a battle for survival, this was the turning point. The beginning of the end, and Kara was ready to see it through.